Sugar bum bum ba-dum bum bum. Oh, honey, honey, ba-dum ba-dum bum bum. Let's talk about baking and why substitutions don't always work. I'm Kathleen, the Allergy Chef, and boy have I got some information for you guys today. So we're going to cover the top 8 allergens. I'm going to go down in a really interesting list and explain to you why sometimes the substitutions you use don't work, or don't work completely, or you're let down, anything of that nature. First, let's start with dairy because it's the easiest. Dairy is a 1-to-1 exchange. Easy peasy, right? Only thing you have to keep in mind is that if a recipe calls for salted butter, and you're using a standard dairy-free butter, you'll need extra salt. Buttermilk is special. You need plant-based milk plus acid to create buttermilk, and it doesn't always work perfectly. And some plant-based milks are better than others for buttermilk, but at the end of the day, nobody's really gonna die because of it. And plant-based milks, each one has a specific taste. Some are very strong, some are very mild. So keep that in mind as you go about your baking. I can't tell you which one to use, only because technically you could use any of them, and it really boils down to personal taste and preference. Number 2 would be soy. It's not usually used in baking unless it's an emulsifier within a different product. So for example, some dairy-free butters might use soy, or just some off-the-shelf products have like a soy lecithin in it, that sort of thing. So if you can find a substitute for that product that contains soy, then the rest of your recipe comes together just fine. Peanuts. Remember, peanuts are a legume, not a tree nut. They're usually used for flavoring in a baked recipe, so a nut butter or a seed butter can easily take the place of peanut, and it's a 1-for-1 exchange. For those of you who cannot do peanuts, tree nuts, or seeds, tiger nut, which is not a nut, poorly named, take a moment to mourn for it. Ugh, poor little tiger nuts. They are not nuts, but you can also use that, so it's technically a vegetable butter. Tree nuts, now they're usually used specifically for texture in baking. Like I said, tiger nuts, they can be used as an exchange. Peanuts, if you can have them because they're not a tree nut, can also be used in exchange. Crunchy chickpeas can help add texture if needed. Seeds as well can get that job done. In some traditional recipes that really rely on a specific nut. So for example, it's gotta be almond flour, or it has to be hazelnut. Those are recipes that unfortunately you'll usually have to skip out on. It's really hard to substitute those as a 1-for-1. That doesn't mean you can't make something similar. It just means you need to manage your expectations and then just enjoy the process and enjoy what you end up with. I do this all the time. Managing your expectations when you're free from, quite frankly, is at least 15% of the battle. Which leads us to wheat. Blend, baby, blend. I can't stress that enough. The only people who should not be blending are people who have so many severe allergies that maybe they have one safe flour and that's it. Everyone else, blend. Blend like your life depends on it, or like your gluten-free baking depends on it, because it does. Here's what I mean. Wheat contains gluten, which is amazing, unless of course you can't have gluten. It adds elasticity, texture, structure, and much more in baking. Now, wheat also comes in different types, depending on the protein, the count, the percentage. And so when you're blending gluten-free, you have to keep all of these things in mind. Now, most baking recipes call for all-purpose wheat flour, which is actually in your benefit, because when you're blending gluten-free and making your own all-purpose blend, it becomes a 1-to-1 exchange. However, if you're using a recipe where they call for a specific, like 00 wheat flour, you have to be very specific when you replace that flour so that your numbers add up pretty evenly to make sure that your substitute turns out okay. Remember, it will never be the same. Let me say that again. It will never be the same. It won't. And anyone who tells you, hey, if you buy this one single flour, it's 1-to-1 for wheat, no, it's not. We've been there, we've done that, we've tested it all. There is no such thing as 1-to-1, especially if you can't have eggs. We're gonna get to that in just a moment. So keep that in mind as you're blending. Most gluten-free items that fall flat. Get it? They fall flat. It's because of a bad flour blend. Now here's what I can tell you. We have a bakery. It's top 8 allergy free, vegan, all sorts of great things. We've had thousands of customers. It's award winning. We have people without food allergies that order our products because it tastes better than the standard stuff. What does that mean? It can be done well, I promise. We'll link to an article for you on blending flour. If you can get your flour blend right, oh man, you'll be sitting pretty on a beach with a gluten-free cake slice in your hand and an umbrella cup thingy. You're just gonna love it. It's gonna be so great. Finally, eggs. Eggs are magic. I'm actually not kidding right now. Eggs are magic in the kitchen. They can lift, moisten, and bind. If you've ever seen that chart on the internet that talks about egg substitutes, you know the one I'm talking about? Forget it. Here's the thing, guys. If you put applesauce in your souffle, you will be disappointed. I wish people could understand that. A souffle is not going to rise because you put in applesauce as the egg substitute. So, when you're substituting eggs when baking, you must think about all three functions: the lift, the moist, the bind. So when we develop recipes, we do it from the ground up every time. Yes, I use flax eggs almost exclusively, but they're only for binding and a bit of moistness. I develop the rest of the recipe to include extra lift and extra moistening so that as a whole, the recipe comes together to create this fantastic thing. Now here's what's so cool about the recipes that we develop and share. If you sub out something, so let's say you can have wheat flour and you take out the gluten-free flour blend and you put in your own flour, recipe still turns out great. Let's say you can have eggs and you take out the flax egg and you put in the eggs instead, recipe still turns out great. It's this really cool exchange where you can sub in and sub out as needed because the whole recipe works together for the power of good. By their powers combined, I am good baking. That's what it's like. So, I hope this helps you understand why sometimes your free from baking just doesn't work. If you're struggling, check out the recipes on Raise. We've got hundreds, I think. Maybe hundreds? 100. A lot of good baking recipes. Cookies, cakes, pies, and more. And it just really starts with having a good blend and going from there. Hope you guys all enjoyed this. Have fun baking. I'll see you next time. Hey, thanks for watching. Make sure you guys leave us a comment, like, subscribe, hit that notification bell.